lots of exploration and...
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Just a coincidence that he happened to say Fairyland.
Oh, maybe. It's like... You think the Fairyland is like another dimension, maybe, and all these... Well, some of these other cases in the 411, which was really interesting, was like mostly disabled people go missing. If you have some sort of disability,
I can see why that is.
Prime target.
Fucking getting eaten by predators, or they just can't climb hills, or things that they need to get out of the woods.
Probably. But some of them got weird, like, kind of weird stuff.
Don't go hiking if you use a wheelchair. Step 1.
Pretty much like these are people that
the
are
woods are not
handicap
handicapped accessible. I have a bad time getting in with my knee. Maybe I should start going out in the woods. I'll get abducted.
So that, from watching these videos, I think there's two things probably. Maybe there's aliens, but I think it's probably cult, because twice during this 411, if you have to listen to it, he talks about how when he was talking to different people, he talked to somebody that was in the military, and during one of the times, the military actually came in, like the Green Berets or something. They're normally like, why are they there? Because some little girl got like lost in the woods. It was during like one of the presidencies a while back. Years ago this was. 20 years. And they were talking to different people, and there's like Green Berets or whatever don't rescue people. They're like military. They kill things. So like what are people telling us? We're talking to like these people that do some of these missions, or like secret missions. They don't even tell their wives what they do because they're sworn to secrecy or whatever. It makes me wonder if there is some fucked up shit going on in the woods, like cults sacrificing people, or you would think just disabled people would be the easiest people to kidnap.
Well, it's kind of like in Hellier, this woman sends them an email from Somerset, and she said there's like all this crap going on. There's abductions, there's child sacrifices, or child kidnappings, or all kind of stuff. I think it was supposed to be like over in this area, like northwest of Somerset, like Hellbridge Road, Strawberry Road, something like that. Strawberry Creek, Buckhorn
Look,
Creek.
that's all like thick woods all through there.
And she was saying like the whole town's involved, or like everybody knows about it. And this guy that owns the Paranormal Museum, he'd heard all these stories because he went to school there and grew up there. And he wouldn't even say the names of the people, but he said like 25 years ago, it's like almost the anniversary of like one of the most grisly murders in Somerset's history or something. I need to look into that and see what that was all about. But like, if the military has like an underground base over there or something, like it sounds like if you go to some of these places, people will watch you and they'll run you out of town. They'll follow you out, like Tyler Strand. That's his name. He went to this place in North Carolina. I forgot where it was, but that's where he found that balloon I was telling you about, right? Like I found these balloons when I went mushroom hunting. One of them was next to a cave, and I didn't think about it might be significant. He found this balloon with these coordinates somebody had sent him, and he kind of got lost. And he finally found his way up to a road, and he followed the road down to this little house, and he was like talking to that woman that lived there. And he looks over at a tree, and she has like a big like old man carved into the side of this tree, like a face of him, like they were talking about that Green Man mythology. And it just so happened there's a tree with a face carved in it. So is she part of this Green Man cult? I'll worship all this like weird stuff that happens, like from Point Pleasant, Mothman area to Ashland, Kentucky to Hellier, Kentucky.
Well, it makes me wonder, is there a way you can look up the national parks here so it like overlays?
The what? All this green is national park, yeah.
Okay.
Or national
and
forest.
there's lots of campgrounds mixed into there and things like that. Because I wonder if you could look up, maybe 411 has it. Maybe I'll look it up for you, maybe. And it'll show you where all the missing people came from, where the highest percentage of missing people is. And when you see all the markers, it's mostly over in the Kentucky area, from what I remember. Like, it's all like a huge amount of people go missing in the fucking national parks there. Like snatched without a trace, and then when they would find, a lot of times when they would find the bodies, it'd be like 3 months later, and all they would have is like sometimes they think people just get lost, sure, but other times it was like it's like someone's around, like let's say they're in an area that's frequented by lots of tourists, right? And then like turn around and their kid's gone, and it's like, well, my kid didn't walk anywhere. They didn't even scream, didn't say anything. And they're just gone. And then they find the kid's like body like 3 months later up a rock face. Some rock climbers find him up a rock face and it's stuffed into like a little cubby hole. Like dead, already dead, and like, but with his clothes still on. And they think it's like it might be a redress, because
you don't kidnap a kid like that without raping him, taking his clothes off. That's Bigfoot activity. I'm just kidding.
Well, I'm thinking is it would be a redress because they said the clothes were in pristine condition, while the body, like the skeleton itself, was in bad condition. So it must have sat out in the elements for a period of time, then was like
the
redressed
clothes
and then
were put back on.
Yeah, the shoes were in good condition, the clothes were in good condition, but the body was like decomposed.
That's weird. They did find like a baby doll stuffed into the branch of a tree in Hellier.
Ugh.
That'd be spooky to find out in the woods.
But the weird thing is, this cubby hole, no animal could like get up there, even if it was like up a sheer rock face. And the cubby hole was like kind of like the perfect size for like a little body to be like shoved in there and stay there without being like pushed out by the elements. It's like on a high shelf essentially, slide it on in there.
Kind of like if you're an alien that lives in a cave and you're going to kidnap somebody, they have to be small enough to fit into the cave hole that you're going to bring them through. You can't kidnap an adult because they ain't going to fit. Plus, they'd probably fight harder.
Probably, yeah.
It's like these tunnel rats in Vietnam. That was one of the main things in Hellier. Was there's this guy, Terry Reist. They called him terrorist, because they thought it was a fake name. But he would be like 75 years old nowadays, or 76, 77, something like that. But in Vietnam, he was a tunnel rat, and they would send him down this hole while the Viet Cong had these tunnels, and they'd give him like two 1911s and a knife and a grenade. So he would go in there, and he said he saw these weird, what they call sloughs, short little ugly fuckers, which he thought they were aliens or something. They wouldn't talk about it, I don't know. And also like spiders that were like the size of dogs.
I remember
or
hearing
adults,
about this.
like that.
Yeah, I don't think I heard it from him.
So
I
you're
heard
supposed
it
to
from
just
like
kill the
some
Vietnamese,
other...
throw a grenade, clear the hole, and leave. But he kept finding all this weird stuff, and that's what he was telling people about later on.
So like, I don't know if I heard this story. You're saying that he went down on these underground tunnels, and some of them weren't bunker tunnels like they thought they were. They were like tunnels of animals, and so there's like, so the one I heard, which didn't come from, I think your source, was like a different account. And yeah, one was like a guy comes in the hole with, he has his 3 teammates with him, and they come into a chamber and they realize, they turn the light on by opening a flare or something, and they notice there's like 3 giant tarantulas in the room looking at them. And these things are like as big as dogs.
You heard the same story too?
I guess so.
I was on. Okay. Was it supposed to be in Vietnam?
Yeah, it was in Vietnam. And then the other one they went into was like, the guy had to swim through a flooded tunnel but it was dark and he couldn't see where he was going. And then when he finally managed to surface, he bumped into a bunch of bodies. And when he realized, when he shined his light on them, he realized there were bodies of like women, and the women were like naked, and they were, their eyes were shut. They were just kind of dead. Looked like they had drowned or something, but they were all like bunched up in this one pool. And then when he entered into the next area, it was full of like gore and like dead bodies and stuff. And he just like set up his explosives and left. And then they blew the tunnel because he saw someone. He was like not. The issue was he was terrified because he went in there and he was like, "What the fuck?" There's like gore all over the walls and blood and dead bodies. And like, what's with all the dead women down here? And he didn't find any sign of like military stuff. And then so he entered another chamber, which had a woman in it that was alive. She seemed to be like she didn't have a gun, and she was naked, and she was just like looked kind of like, he said she looked unhinged, but she looked different from the other women, like older. And so he just ended up like shooting her. He had a rifle with him, or whatever you were saying, right? And he got the fuck out of there.
Oh, another thing I didn't tell you about in Hellier is there's all these accounts of people in these caves. They would find people wearing robes, and then they would have like these like wands. Or they had one of them. They said he had like a curved walking stick and a crystal in his hand. And then they had most of them had like these wands, and they would like shoot this light at you, and it would paralyze you, and you wouldn't be able to move. You heard anything like that? Because it sounds like in the alien abduction cases, people talk about being in an alien, like a UFO or flying saucer, and they can't move because they're paralyzed. If they have a device that does that,
yeah. And
they're also the same ones that live in these caves.
Well, then there was like you're saying, there was the what do you say, sloths? Was
Sloughs, SLUF. Short, little, ugly fuckers.
Oh, okay. So they're like, he came across like gnomes or dwarves or something.
I guess just non-humans. Yeah, there's a book called The Inhumans, Inhumanoids, something like that. Looks really interesting. I need to get that and check it out.
Yeah. So the other one was, the other story I read or listened to on YouTube was, it was talking about these guys. They found this mine, and they found the end of the mine is like unfinished. They can see through a hole that goes to the other side. So they ended up mining it out. It took them days to do this. And while they were doing it, they keep hearing like a howling noise whenever they would start to do mining. And they thought that it wasn't an animal. They thought that it was just wind or something coming through the pressure difference, And they eventually got that open and went inside there, and ended up running into a what they thought was a person. But later on, when they ran out of the cave, they set up the explosives. And then all these stories were supposed to be came out of Vietnam, essentially, from testimonies from people who had gone there. Years later, just like your guy you were talking about earlier. I don't know if it's all related or if it's embellished, whatever. But it all sounds eerily similar. They went down there to clear the Vietnam soldiers out, and ended up finding all sorts of mystical creatures and other bullshit down there.
So they had somebody they thought was a man, and they went and exploded it anyway?
Yeah, well, because the man looked like, he reminds me of what you're talking about, short little ugly fucker, but he was a hostile one.
I was going to say, if it was something, could possibly be Bigfoot. I mean, you think about how big Mammoth Cave is. It's not one of these small little caves where...
No, it's fucking massive.
Goblins walk. So you're saying if you go to Vietnam, you're looking for Viet Cong hiding in caves, and you just... any old cave you go to, it could end up being like an alien cave or full of monsters.
So from what I understand is they would send you down into every single cave that the scouts found. That was oh, this looks like a human could use this as
So it's not like all caves have weird stuff in them, but every now and then. Because I was going to say maybe Mammoth Cave, like when they first found that, maybe they did find stuff and nobody said anything about it, and they cleared it all
The
out.
military
Made a
just cleared
tourist
it all
attraction
out.
out of it.
Yeah.
I hate when like the extraterrestrial highway over at Area 51, it's like a joke now. Everybody has all these stupid alien hats and toys and
Well,
fucking fake little green men saucer bullshit. It's like the Mothman Museum and shit. It's like,
yeah, it's
or
a
like
joke.
I looked at that Kelly Hopkinsville case. I was like, maybe I should go to Hopkinsville and find this farm and see what it's really like. I look at it, there's like they have a Little Green Men festival every year in Kelly, Kentucky now or whatever, or Hopkinsville, Kentucky. I guess they're at that Kelly farm. It's like everybody just goes and parties and gets drunk and they make a big joke at everything. Nobody actually looks into it seriously, or they commercialize it and make merchandise out of everything. It's like Bigfoot's the same thing.
Yeah. Well, you've seen some of the people with squash hunters. It's just like they're retarded or something, or they.
Yeah. Like that Expedition Bigfoot show. I try to get into it, but it's so bad. Like they don't really nobody. You know, when you watch one of those shows, you're not going to find anything. They're not going to find Bigfoot.
They're not. They didn't find shit, or else people would.
Secret of Skinwalker Ranch was a little different because they were finding what I would consider evidence. Like they're doing measurements. They're sending rockets up into the sky and they're getting like spikes on radiation levels and stuff. Their equipment's malfunctioning. The cows are acting weird. They're getting a lot of weird stuff happening on Skinwalker Ranch. But the Bigfoot thing, they always do those weird cutaways. They hear a noise and they cut away and come back. Oh, it was nothing. And I don't know, like the one interesting thing about this new episode that's in southeastern Kentucky, again, Expedition Bigfoot, there's this guy said he had a Bigfoot encounter and he plays this video and it sounds like kind of like a howl, but it sounds like something you could get confused for a baby crying. And again, from Hellier, there's a guy talking about this cave. He's like, you could always hear a baby crying up in there. And there's lots of these stories of like people getting lost in the woods or caves or all kinds of weird stuff. You always hear like a baby crying or a door, like a car door closing. It was like one of the most commonly misheard sounds or something like that.
Yeah, that's weird. I've gone in a lot of caves around here, and maybe these ones just aren't cursed like the ones you're talking about. And I've never run into those noises. Caves and old abandoned mine shafts and stuff. And that's the other thing. Like I'm kind of a believer in luck to some degree, because unless it's just dumb luck on my side, there's a lot of like, you know, people are like, oh, don't go to these places because they're dangerous. Right? But I've been to plenty of places that are like really dangerous and derelict and fallen apart mines, and I've never seen any spooky shit, like at all. So I almost want to. I want to see like a ghost or some other bullshit, but I never see anything like that.
Trying to find that video of the UFO Galactic Federation. Because I guess it's like a big joke now. But there used to be like a daytime bunch of... That was just 3. There was like, I don't know, 20 or 30 at least lights in the sky.
Wasn't there like one a while ago above China that was like...
Yeah, I think this is it. Let's see. Oh shit, no, this is all in a straight line. Remember that video where it was like breaking apart and that black guy was freaking the fuck out? That was one of the most convincing videos I ever saw of a UFO. Is it this one? I don't know. Anyway, there's supposed to be like the good aliens and the bad aliens. This was a theory that people had. And it was mentioned in Hellier that the good aliens were from Sirius and the bad aliens were from Orion. And then wasn't the aliens Bob Lazar talking about they were from like... Oh, what was the name of that planet? Or star?
Yeah, Bob Lazar.
He named a different star from when he was at Area 51. Anyway, supposedly Orion was like the hunter and Sirius was the dog star, and like the hunter and the dog kind of mythology and stuff. and they said all these aliens would like the guy that the David Christie guy that wrote him said that they kidnapped his dog, and a lot of people have like they'd find mutilated dogs. The aliens apparently don't like dogs for some reason. Like if it's the
Yeah, and
dog
cattle
star,
too, right? Everything gets mutilated.
I mean,
You watched the documentary on that the Skinwater Walker Ranch, right?
Yeah.
And they never showed you really anything, but they did say like, animals were like mutilated and they're all cut and weird in these same surgical patterns.
Mm-hmm.
So
There's a lot of UFO footage. I mean, it can't all be hoaxes, right?
crop circles were all hoaxes, weren't they?
But I can't figure out how, like, if Sirius is called the Dog Star and the aliens hate dogs, how did they know that when they named it Dog Star? That don't make sense. It's just like one of those things. Like, this ain't adding up. But then, that also kind of leads into what I was talking about earlier, how there's this galactic zoo hypothesis that the planet Earth is just where it's a public test room, a PTR. It's like the aliens have us all here to like test out what happens if such and such takes place. Like if you make a reality TV star the president, does everybody lose their minds and then like try to attack the government? Yeah, so let's not do that with our society. It's like they've seen that it's a bad idea, so they patch their own government, their own society, and they see like we're like the testing grounds. Maybe we're not even real. Maybe we just like when we die, we go back to the real place or something, where all the real stuff's at. Or maybe we're just like computer code. That's a different theory. But that would make sense with a lot of this stuff. If the good aliens are the zookeepers and the bad aliens are people that are trying to like sneak into the zoo to like fuck with the humans to see if they can change the outcomes, to change what they want to happen on the real planet, like they kind of manipulate things to make the government, the good aliens, confused about, like mess with the experiment, to change the results. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think and like, isn't it like Men in Black was kind of like that? They had airport where all the aliens like showed up to. You're like, oh, you're not allowed to come into the country. You're not allowed to come into Earth.
Yeah, like aren't the aliens supposed to be like, some of them look humans, like you can't tell the difference between a human and an alien, but the other ones are like the grays, or like other kinds of.
They're wearing like a humanoid skin suits, so they're kind of like remember them from FBI? They were like whole bodies. They had like a tiny little dude that was just sitting in a chair, like inside the guy's head.
You're talking about Men in Black? That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's fantasy, but like.
I thought you were talking about like the real Men in Black mythos.
The real Men in Black,
because
yeah,
people
they were
really
actually
do show
like
up
from aliens, called the Greys, and they could only show up for like and talk to you for so long, and they had to get going.
Here's an interesting question: what if you have like some kind of paranormal UFO encounter, and somebody comes up and like tries to like mess with you, like a Men in Black? You think they're a Men in Black, but you don't know for sure. But just in case, you go ahead and like shoot them. You've got a dead body in your head. Would the police be like bought and paid for by the Men in Black, or like some other organization would be so high up that they would show up and they would say, like there's no way you could explain to the society like, hey, this is one of these Men in Blacks. We need to take this body and study it. They would vanish that body so fast, it would disappear. You would see like the inside of a cell for the rest of your life. You'd never get out. You go in like a CIA black site or something. You just vanish off the face of the earth probably. Mm-hmm. So like, how do you ever find proof of these Men in Black if you can't, like, it's same with Bigfoot. If you see a Bigfoot and you shoot one to study it, that's what you want to do, right? If you saw a Bigfoot, like, it's better to shoot one so you have a dead body, rather than letting it get away and still having no proof of a Bigfoot. Because a camera's not really going to prove anything to some people. You'd need like an actual.
Yeah, you can Photoshop everything nowadays. Right?
Like they had that one Bigfoot they saw on a ridge line. If somebody just shot that fucker and got him, there you go. We know what it is now. Unless they're so rare that it's like it's the last one on Earth. Have you ever heard the Mormon connection to Bigfoot? Have I told you about that before? Oh my god. So Mormons believe that in the Bible, when Cain slays Abel, God curses him to never die and walk the earth alone, never to be seen by man. And that's what they think Bigfoot is. That's why you can't see him, because it's like God's intervening.
He's intervening in my ability to see him.
That's part of the curse, is that he can't be seen by mortal men. And he can't die. It's just the one guy all over the world. It's just Cain walking around. And I guess he can't cut his hair either, because he can't go to a barbershop. Therefore, he's hairy as fuck.
It was like super hairy, like Eastern European hairy, where it's like you're a gay bear, a man bear. One of those walking around in the woods.
Exactly.
It's kind of funny because it's like you would be able to see him on maybe your peripherals or something. But if it's God's will or some sort of mystical bullshit, like, I feel like, then like, what if can God's will stop me from shooting him?
Maybe
So,
just
like-
stop him from dying, I guess. I mean, if that's the case, then none of these Bigfoots that we've seen are the real Bigfoot, because they've been seen. Like the
Well,
videos.
the ones we've seen are not real because you can't see them. Well, what about? That's the thing. It's like is magic affected by technology? Because usually with magic, at least when people try to take pictures of like ghosts and shit, they'll see stuff with the camera when like we can't see anything, like vice versa, right?
Mm-hmm. I don't know, you lost me. I'll start thinking about like tarot cards and shit. Because that was one of my problems with Hellier, is that they get into some really woo-woo kind of mysticism that...
Well, that's the
It's not
issue with all
scientific.
this stuff, though. All the magic. I'm just wondering, can you?
There's like magic,
is, like,
like
it's
Harry
just
Potter
magic
magic, and then there's like illusionist magic, and then there's also like Levian Satanism, where they say you can like put your will and your intent into a thing, and you can cause it to happen by saying words or focusing on it. Kind of like The Secret. It's a lot like that book, The Secret.
Oh yeah, I watched. You know, I hated The Secret. It's.
I think
kinda
that's the
bullshit.
magic where you put a K at the end.
Yeah.
Because some people spell it magics with a K.
Magic, like
And they say you're a practitioner.
Magica.
You're a practitioner of magic in that case. That's the
playing
whole.
RuneScape.
You have to set your intention as part of it, I think, and then you have to be in the right headspace, which that kind of gets into like confirmation bias and God of the gaps kind of thing. Like you don't have an explanation for something, so you substitute what you want it to be. It's like your explanation for. That's why I don't think it's a good pathway to truth. That
no,
kind of,
because
like,
a lot of those
esoteric,
Bigfoot guys probably have the. Oh, it must have been
ethereal kind of
Bigfoot,
thing.
even though it's a bear or something else. And also, like, it makes me wonder if some of these things do exist. Like, if Bigfoot exists, who's to say that like skinwalkers and other weird, like creepy looking animals don't exist? We just haven't like found them yet. But at the same time, there's so many people like going out in the woods hunting. You'd think that they'd be able, like, oh, I shot Bigfoot, everyone. Let everyone look at it.
Yeah, Joe Rogan's talked about this before, like the odds of us finding a Bigfoot skull. And he's talking about like how many times have you went out into the woods and you've seen like a coyote skull or an elk skull.
Yeah.
You never see those. I see deer skull all the time, but there's certain things it's just like they stay away from people so much that
When they die, usually they die when they're old.
or maybe it's
And they
something
get
about their
scavenged
diet,
by-
or they don't have enough calcium and their bones deteriorate faster or something, maybe. Or maybe they bury their dead. Maybe they're intelligent enough to bury their dead, but they're not like...
Wolves have dens they always go back to, usually, right? Like, what if a wolf dies?
Where does a
because-
wolf die? Where does it go to die? Does it get eaten by other wolves? I imagine, or mountain lions. Mountain lions is another thing that kind of can be confused as a baby crying sound, I think.
Yeah, you can. Mountain lions make a baby crying noise. That's why when you heard about that, that's actually what I was told in the woods by my mother. She told me if I hear a baby crying, don't go to it, because it's not a baby. It's a mountain lion.
Or Sam Squanch.
Well,
Yeah,
it
they
could
were
be
saying
that.
some of these caves, they were like accounts of it dragging animals into the cave, like something big enough to pull a deer into a cave. Because a lot of the caves, they had like piles and piles of bones. Like, I don't think coyotes
yeah.
do that, because I've had coyotes like in my yard still, like
Well, what about
deer
wolves?
carcasses that I leave
Wolves
out.
around? Wolves are bigger than coyotes.
Do they drag a whole corpse or a carcass into a cave though, or do they just like chew on it and they pull maybe a
Well,
leg off?
wolves usually are in a
back?
pack, so it'll be like 3 or 4 wolves pulling deer
Well,
into a cave.
maybe. I mean, you always see like lions on the savannah. They just eat the kill where it's at. They don't. Well, they don't really have caves. Lions.
Well, I guess if like animals don't like being outside or in the elements when it's cold and raining. Really.
Bears.
Either
Do they drag
bears
stuff?
usually bears don't like that either. Around here, bears like they have to hibernate through the winter, so they need to have some sort of shelter. They'll dig like.
I guess a
sometimes
bear
they
would
dig
drag
their
a
own
guy
cave.
into a cave.
Yeah, a bear would be no problem. Just pick it up and bears.
That's one of the
Bears
things
even
about
when they're small are pretty strong.
like southeastern Kentucky. We have a lot of new animals coming in. Like I've heard a couple of people say that they've seen mountain lions here, which nobody thinks they're here. But I've heard accounts of mountain lions being here, and black bears just recently started coming back. And they got elk now, and they got wild boar in certain parts. It's starting to get kind of crazy. Stuff you haven't seen before. If you're like out in the woods and you see it all of a sudden, and it's something you're not familiar with, you kind of get freaked out. Maybe you think it's a Bigfoot.
I guess so.
Like if you
a
hear
bear,
an elk's not going to sound like a deer. You're going to think, well, that's way bigger than a deer because what else is out here that's bigger than a deer? I don't know anything, but you don't know that there's elk there yet. And then you think it must have been a Bigfoot. And then word kind of spreads, there's Bigfoots around here.
The other thing is bears. They can stand upright like a person, and yet like so. I'm not saying they look like Bigfoot, but or like a monkey or a humanoid, but they kind of do when they're standing up. And if they're at a distance or they're in the woods and like they're far away from you, and you maybe see them like from a bad angle, you could be like, "That's a person," but
Yeah. You can
I've
tell
seen
they
some
mistake
other
a bear for a
weird
Bigfoot.
shit that I don't know if it's like bullshit or not. People have got footage of they'll fly over some forests with
Think about that guy that got into the Capitol building the other day with the Viking helmet. If you saw him out in the woods, would you think he was a Bigfoot?
my
And people dress like that to go to Washington, D.C. Imagine what they wear out in the woods.
for a revolution. Yeah,
He probably looks like a damn Bigfoot out in the woods.
that's what makes me wonder where all these people came from. Do they come? Are these like woods people?
Probably. They're super Trump supporters, so that would make sense.
You saw like the tier list I posted in Discord. That was pretty good.
You know what?
If you go to your Discord, like go to the tier list I posted for the rioters.
Must have been a while back. I don't see it. Anyway, I think I want to stop the video here. I think we've covered about everything that we could talk about today. There's even an article from Forbes about the zoo hypothesis.
Yeah. Well, it's like makes me wonder for a while, like we're living in a simulation or we're living in a zoo. I don't
Yeah,
know.
simulation theory. That's what I was going to think of earlier. Yeah, that fits in with my public test room thing. Even if we're real, we're a simulation for another society's framework of their society to like to test it out.
Who's to say we're all not just NPCs in some sort of game of Civ, alien Civ? Get two different fucking. That's to get the two different alien species, right? They're supposedly. Yeah, they're like two different players. They're like, okay, well, I'm gonna do this turn. I'm gonna do something over here with Russia.
That whole
just
NPC thing,
playing
that
different
totally
countries.
fits in with the idea that we're a simulation or a zoo theory thing. Because you wouldn't need as many people. You just have a lot of us that are just like NPCs that don't really think or they have like a different kind of brain pattern, where they see words as shapes or whatever that girl said. You know, she sees sentences as the shape of the sentence, and she doesn't like. She can't picture things in her mind when she reads something. She can't. People don't have imaginations. How do you walk around and like function without an imagination?
Well, she seemed kind of clueless, that lady. But I have met there's like a lot more people now that have like disabilities than before, because it's kind of like the idea like normally these kind of people wouldn't be able to function on their own if they were in their own survival setting, right? You need to be able to picture things in your mind and do a lot of these different things to be able to like be self-sufficient and survive in the woods or something, right?
Yeah. Like if you want to build a shelter, how do you go about it if you can't picture it in your mind first?
Yeah.
Or a campfire.
These kind of people seem to be like NPCs where they have to have like instructions or they will never think to do that.
I think that's why a lot of people are really easily addicted to their phones too, because they can just lose themselves in this world. It's just like absorbing information but not really taking it in. So they can just sit and stare at Twitter all day and Reddit.
Yeah. I remember a few years ago, Twitter went down for like a day, and there was quite a few people who were like losing their minds. They can't tweet to people. That was before the lockdown, right? Now we got the lockdown, and these people are like that. Now they're more isolated. That's all they do, and I think it causes people to. That's probably what caused the riots in the Capitol, because you just had all of these like people
Pent up
stuck at
frustrations.
home, getting frustrated, tweeting about it, and getting mad. Just, I'm surprised you guys didn't have like more of a explosive reaction. Like some of these Trumpers that I've seen that have like their own tanks. I'm surprised they didn't take their tanks out of storage and drive them into the Capitol or something.
If they had just fired a couple warning shots in the air, that whole crowd would have dispersed and they would have just freaked out. They
Probably would have turned around and screamed and ran.
They would have thought it would have been another Las Vegas shooting, and they would have all panicked. Because there's so much craziness there, it's easy to imagine a crazy gunman going crazy and killing everybody.
In the riots, I did see quite a few people like wearing like full military gear, but it was almost
one
like
guy
they were
was,
LARPing as soldiers. Like they're not actual soldiers.
One guy was former Air Force. They had like a big helmet and riot gear on.
Yeah.
And he wasn't. He was on the people storming the Capitol. He wasn't the police.
Yeah.
It's easy to confuse them when you're in a big melee like that.
Yeah, but I'm just surprised it didn't get more violent. Like I'm surprised they didn't burn the Capitol. Well, maybe because they don't. I don't know what their plan was. They're like, oh, we're gonna storm it, go into the Congress and get Congress to do something or other.
Yeah, they're just going to like reverse the whole election because some people were mad about it. How's that going to work? What about the other half? They voted the other way.
Yeah, they don't think about the other half. And remember, Hillary lost to Trump, but then she didn't go in as far as Trump did. She didn't go. She was like, okay, beat me, I'm done. Like even how crazy she was, she conceded, and Trump just pushed it for like. But it's almost like.
How crazy is it to try to say it was Antifa dressed up as Trump supporters? Like, if they think it's leftists doing it, or Black Lives Matter, I guess is who they thought it was. Y'all just got Biden elected, and now you're going in there to stop Biden from being inaugurated? Like, what? How does that make any sense?
Well, it's like people who are hired to do that. So, like, they're criminals, usually, or thugs. It'll be like someone pays.
But it goes against what you're trying to do. If you want Biden to get elected, why would you try to stop him from being the president? That you wanted him to be the president.
So it's like you poison the water for everyone else, essentially. It's like, okay, we're going to go do something that's going to make, like, this particular group of people look really bad.
I mean, it does make Trump look really bad. They're talking about all kinds of stuff.
Banning him from everything, and...
Oh, the golf tournament pulled out of Mar-a-Lago that usually has it there. They're trying to get him impeached in the next couple of weeks so he doesn't get any of his presidential benefits being like an ex-president.
Yeah, well, normally it's like, it's kind of weird. It's like you're not allowed to travel places.
He was going to go to, like, Ireland, I think, in golf, and they said, no, we don't want you here, and you can't come into the country because of COVID restrictions.
Lol.
Yeah, I think it's funny.
It is funny. Anything else like that happened to him?
Nothing
Like I
of,
know they banned him from like a lot of social media stuff. They're like, so after this, like nobody's gonna want to work with him. Period. I'm assuming, and they're gonna get a bunch of backlash from everyone else.
but, all right, I'm gonna go